Nobody wants to confront the raw, uncomfortable truth that the very people who brought you into this world, your family, may have left you with wounds so deep they've shaped the core of who you are, long before you had the ability to protect yourself. Before you dismiss this as just another attempt to point fingers at your parents, take a moment to pause. This isn't about blame or painting your family as villains. It's about unveiling a reality that society often buries beneath layers of denial, expectation, and silence. Your earliest experiences, the ones you had no control over, have left imprints that influence how you see yourself, how you connect with others, and how you navigate the complexities of life. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share might just unlock the door to understanding the invisible burdens you've been carrying, offering a path toward healing, self-compassion, and reclaiming the person you were always meant to be. The harsh reality is that you didn't get to choose the first people who shaped your worldview. You didn't select the voices that would echo in your mind for decades, whether they were warm and encouraging, harsh and critical, or eerily absent. You didn't pick the hands that would either nurture your spirit with love and affirmation, or wound it with neglect, disapproval, or impossible expectations, all before you could even begin to understand what was happening. Yet, those voices and those hands became the architects of your earliest sense of self, laying the foundation for how you perceive your worth, your place in the world, and your capacity to give and receive love. These early influences weren't just fleeting moments. They were the building blocks of your psychological framework, shaping your beliefs about yourself and others in ways that continue to resonate, often unconsciously, into adulthood. Franz Kafka, the literary genius behind haunting works like *The Metamorphosis*, *The Trial*, and *The Castle*, understood this dynamic on a profoundly personal level. His life was a testament to the enduring impact of a childhood marked by emotional neglect and relentless criticism. Kafka grew up in Prague in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the eldest son of Hermann Kafka, a successful but domineering businessman whose larger-than-life presence cast a long, oppressive shadow over his son's life. Hermann's parenting style was rooted in control, harsh judgment, and unattainable standards. He viewed emotional vulnerability as weakness and believed that criticism and toughness were necessary to mold his son into a successful man. For Kafka, this translated into a childhood filled with feelings of inadequacy, alienation, and self-doubt, emotions that permeated his writing, which often explored themes of powerlessness, absurdity, and the struggle to find meaning in a world that feels indifferent or hostile. Kafka's relationship with his father wasn't just a personal struggle. It was the lens through which he viewed himself and the world. His stories, filled with characters trapped in surreal, oppressive systems, reflect the psychological weight of growing up under a father whose approval was always out of reach. This dynamic wasn't unique to Kafka. It's a universal experience for many who feel the lingering effects of their family's influence, whether through overt criticism, emotional absence, or the pressure to meet impossible standards. Kafka's life illustrates a painful truth: the people who are supposed to love and protect you the most can, unintentionally or not, leave you with wounds that shape your entire existence. Picture yourself as a young child, perhaps 3 or 4 years old, your mind a blank canvas, absorbent and vulnerable, like soft clay waiting to be shaped. Neuroscientists describe this stage as a period of extraordinary neuroplasticity, where the brain is highly malleable, forming neural pathways that will influence your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors for decades. Every word spoken to you, every glance you receive, every moment of connection or neglect leaves a lasting impression. These early interactions don't just shape your emotions, they wire your brain, embedding beliefs about yourself, others, and the world that become the operating system for your life. A harsh word from a parent can become a belief that you're not good enough. A moment of neglect can teach you that your needs don't matter. A look of disappointment can convince you that love is something to be earned, not freely given. During these formative years, your parents or caregivers were likely navigating their own challenges. Perhaps your mother was silently battling unresolved trauma from her own childhood, carrying wounds she didn't know how to heal, wounds that might have stemmed from her own parents' struggles. Like a grandmother who suppressed her depression, In an era when mental health was taboo, maybe your father was caught in a cycle of behavior inherited from his own upbringing, repeating patterns of emotional distance, anger, or perfectionism that his father modeled. Or perhaps both were simply winging it, thrust into parenthood without a roadmap, hoping their efforts would be enough to raise you well. They might have been shaped by societal pressures, cultural norms that prioritized discipline over affection, provision over emotional presence, or stoicism over vulnerability. But hope, however well-intentioned, doesn't shield a child from harm. Good intentions don't erase the impact of emotional absence, inconsistent care, or words that cut deeper than any physical wound. The painful truth is that the path to psychological struggle is often paved with the best intentions of parents who were doing what they thought was right, or at least the best they could manage with the tools, knowledge, and emotional capacity they had. This isn't about vilifying parents or casting them as villains. Most were likely trying to navigate their own challenges, shaped by their own upbringing, cultural expectations, or personal limitations. But acknowledging their humanity doesn't erase the reality of the wounds they left behind. It doesn't mean you have to pretend their actions didn't hurt or that their efforts were always sufficient to meet your needs as a vulnerable child. The gap between their intentions and the impact on you is where the damage often lies, a gap that can feel like a chasm when you're the one carrying the scars. Kafka's own story offers a poignant example of this dynamic. At the age of 36, he poured his heart into a 47-page letter to his father, a raw, unfiltered account of how Herman's coldness, relentless criticism, and unattainable expectations had shaped him into a man who felt perpetually unworthy, like a stranger in his own skin. In this letter, which Kafka never sent, he described himself as a nothing. Not because he lacked talent or intellect, his literary works would later be celebrated as masterpieces that captured the human condition with unparalleled depth, but because his father's treatment had convinced him of his own inadequacy. This letter wasn't just a personal catharsis. It was a testament to the enduring power of childhood wounds, revealing how deeply a parent's words and actions can embed themselves in a child's psyche, shaping their self-image for decades. Kafka's experience resonates with a universal truth. Childhood isn't just about what happened to you, it's about what did in single quotes happen. Perhaps your parents never raised a hand to you, and for that, you might feel a sense of gratitude or even guilt for questioning their efforts. But did they truly see you? Did they recognize your unique spirit, your fears, your dreams, your individuality? Or were you simply another responsibility on their endless list of obligations? A box to check off in their daily routine. Maybe they provided for you materially, ensuring there was food on the table, clothes on your back, and a roof over your head, but did they nurture you emotionally? Did they create a space where you felt safe to express your feelings, to be your authentic self? Or did you learn early on that love was conditional, tied to achievements, compliance, or being good? Perhaps your home was free of overt conflict, with no yelling or dramatic confrontations. But was it filled with meaningful connection, or did silence dominate the household? In many families, emotions are treated like fragile, dangerous objects best ignored to avoid disruption or discomfort. Growing up in a home where feelings were dismissed or suppressed teaches you to bury your own emotions, to doubt your worth, to prioritize others' comfort over your own needs. This absence of emotional acknowledgement becomes its own form of programming, embedding beliefs that your feelings are unimportant, that vulnerability is dangerous, or that you must perform to be loved. These are the invisible scripts written into your mental operating system before you had the awareness or power to question them, scripts that continue to influence how you navigate relationships, work, and your own inner world. Society often dismisses these wounds, urging you to move on, let go of the past, or stop being so sensitive. The narrative is that trauma follows a convenient timeline, that the damage done to a developing mind should somehow vanish when you reach adulthood, graduate college, or achieve external markers of success like a career, marriage, or children. But trauma doesn't work that way. The wounds are real, embedded in your nervous system, influencing how you respond to stress, love, conflict, and even joy. They manifest in the anxiety that flares when you feel criticized, the self-doubt that creeps in despite your accomplishments, or the relationships that seem to mirror the same patterns of neglect, rejection, or conditional love you experienced. As a child, these aren't random quirks. They're the echoes of a childhood where your needs weren't fully met, where your authentic self wasn't fully seen or valued. This is what I call the Kafka complex, the psychological prison, built by the very people who were supposed to be your safe haven. Kafka's father wasn't a monster in the traditional sense. He was a man shaped by his own era, upbringing, and cultural beliefs, convinced that toughness was a form of love, that criticism would motivate his son to succeed, and that emotional vulnerability was a weakness to be avoided. He likely believed he was preparing Kafka for a harsh world, not realizing that his methods were creating a world of their own, one where Kafka felt perpetually inadequate, unworthy, and disconnected. This dynamic is all too familiar for many of us. Perhaps you grew up with a parent who equated discipline with love, who saw affection as indulgence, or who dismissed your emotions as weakness. The tragedy is that, like Kafka, you may have spent your life chasing something that should have been given freely, unconditional acceptance and love. Kafka's story illustrates this trap vividly. Even as an adult, even as he produced literary masterpieces that would outlive him and his father, Kafka kept seeking his father's approval. He was a brilliant writer, crafting stories that captured the absurdity and alienation of the human experience, yet he couldn't shake the belief that he was a nothing in his father's eyes. This is the power of early programming. It convinces you that your worth depends on external validation, that you must earn love through achievements or compliance, that you are only as good as others perceive you to be. It's a trap that keeps you tethered to the past, seeking something you deserved all along, but may never receive from those who withheld it. You see this pattern everywhere: successful professionals who feel like imposters despite their accolades, talented artists who deflect praise, adults who apologize for taking up space or expressing their needs, people who have achieved everything they thought they wanted, but still feel an aching emptiness inside. These are the grown children still waiting for a parent to say, "You are enough, you are worthy, I'm proud of you." But here's the gut-wrenching truth: that moment may never come from the people you expect it from, and even if it does, it won't heal the wound, because you're not that vulnerable child anymore. You're an adult now, and the responsibility falls on you to give yourself the validation, love, and acceptance you didn't receive back then. This is both a daunting challenge and a liberating opportunity, because it places the power to heal in your hands. Here's a perspective that might shift how you see your story. The damage you carry isn't just about your parents'. It's part of a much larger intergenerational cycle. Your parents were shaped by their parents, who were shaped by theirs, in a chain of inherited patterns stretching back generations. Trauma, unhealed wounds, and unmet needs are passed down like unwanted family heirlooms. Your grandmother's unspoken depression, hidden behind a facade of strength in an era when mental health was stigmatized, may have manifested as your mother's anxiety, a quiet undercurrent that shaped her interactions with you. Your grandfather's unresolved anger, perhaps rooted in his own experiences of hardship or rejection, may have become your father's emotional unavailability, leaving you to navigate a home where feelings were rarely acknowledged. And now, you're carrying the weight of their unprocessed grief, their unhealed pain, their unmet needs like a backpack filled with rocks that don't even belong to you. This intergenerational transmission of trauma isn't just a psychological concept. It's a lived reality for many. Consider, for example, a family where silence was the default response to conflict, a pattern that might trace back to a great-grandparent who survived a traumatic event and learned to suppress their emotions to cope. That silence, passed down through generations, becomes a family culture where feelings are buried, needs are dismissed, and vulnerability is avoided. Or perhaps your family's story involves a parent who grew up in poverty, vowing to provide material security for their children, but in their focus on financial stability, they overlook the emotional nourishment you craved. These patterns aren't intentional acts of harm. They're the residue of unresolved pain, carried forward until someone chooses to break the cycle. Kafka saw this dynamic clearly in his own life. His writing often explored the absurdity of systems bureaucratic, familial, or societal that impose arbitrary rules and expectations, leaving individuals feeling powerless, confused, and inadequate. His stories, filled with characters navigating impossible situations, mirror the chaos of a childhood where the rules seem to shift unpredictably, where nothing you do feels quite good enough. For many, the family system is the first bureaucratic nightmare we encounter, a place where we learn that our needs may not matter as much as keeping the peace, where our authentic self might be deemed unacceptable, where love feels like a reward to be earned rather than a gift freely given. This early conditioning shapes how we move through the world as adults, influencing why we struggle to set boundaries, why we attract relationships that echo our childhood wounds, why we sabotage our own success, or why we feel guilty for experiencing joy. These patterns aren't random. They're the result of programming installed before you had the capacity to question or resist it. Society compounds this damage with a pervasive form of gaslighting, the narrative that if your parents weren't physically abusive, if they provided food, shelter, and the basics, you should be grateful and move on. This cultural script dismisses emotional neglect as insignificant, labeling your pain as first-world problems or oversensitivity. It's as if the absence of visible bruises or a dramatic story of abuse means your struggles are invalid. But emotional neglect is real abuse. Having your feelings dismissed or invalidated is real trauma. Growing up in a home where you felt like an inconvenience, where your emotional needs were overlooked, or where you were expected to perform to be loved leaves scars that are just as real as physical ones, even if they're invisible to the outside world. These wounds shape how you relate to yourself and others, influencing your relationships, your career, and your ability to pursue your dreams. You don't need a dramatic, cinematic story of abuse to carry wounds that affect every aspect of your life. The deepest damage often comes from what appears to be a normal family, a family that looks respectable, functional, or even enviable from the outside, but feels like an emotional dessert on the inside. Kafka's family fit this mold. His father was a successful businessman. The family wasn't poor or ostracized, and they presented a facade of respectability to the world. Yet Kafka felt like he was suffocating under the weight of his father's expectations and emotional absence. Respectability isn't the same as love. Providing material needs isn't the same as nurturing a child's soul. Being physically present, sitting at the dinner table, attending school events doesn't equate to being emotionally available, to seeing and valuing the child's inner world. There's a part of you right now, as you read this, that is still that young child, waiting for someone to notice their pain, to validate their worth, to offer the love and acceptance they needed all those years ago. This inner child is still hoping that if you're good enough, successful enough, or perfect enough, someone will finally say, "You matter, you're enough." They show up in your moments of self-doubt, in the relationships where you settle for less than you deserve, in the quiet ache that persists despite your achievements. They're not trying to sabotage your life, they're trying to save it. They're begging you to stop abandoning yourself the way others did, to recognize that you were always enough, that your worth was never contingent on meeting someone else's standards. This inner child deserves to be heard, to know that they matter, that the failure wasn't theirs but the system's familial, cultural, societal that shaped them. Acknowledging this inner child isn't about wallowing in self-pity or dwelling on the past. It's about giving them a voice, about validating their pain and their needs. It's about recognizing that the anxiety, depression, or patterns of self-sabotage you experience as an adult are often the echoes of that child's unmet needs, their cries for attention and love. For example, consider the adult who struggles to accept compliments, always deflecting praise with self-deprecation. This behavior might trace back to a childhood where praise was rare or tied to performance, leaving them with a belief that they're only valuable when they achieve something extraordinary. Or think of the person who repeatedly enters relationships with emotionally unavailable partners, a pattern that might reflect a childhood where emotional connection was scarce, teaching them that love is something to chase rather than expect. Healing from this kind of damage is daunting. and it's where most people turn away. Acknowledging the wounds is hard enough, but healing them is terrifying. It means grieving the childhood you never had, the one where you were seen, heard, and loved unconditionally. It means accepting that your parents were flawed humans, shaped by their own wounds and limitations, who couldn't give you what they didn't have themselves. It means taking responsibility for your own recovery, not because you caused the wounds, but because you're the only one who can mend them. It means becoming the parent to yourself that you needed all those years ago, a parent who sees you, hears you, and loves you without conditions. Society doesn't make this easy. It pushes you to suck it up, to keep producing and consuming, to pretend everything is fine. The mental health industry often pathologizes you, slapping on diagnoses and medications that frame you as broken rather than recognizing that you're responding normally to abnormal treatment. A diagnosis might help name your pain, but it doesn't always address the root cause, the early experiences that shaped your sense of self. The self-help industry, meanwhile, peddles quick fixes, positive thinking, manifestation, or choosing happiness, as if decades of deeply ingrained programming can be undone with affirmations, vision boards, or a new morning routine. But real healing is messy, slow, and painful. It requires you to feel everything you were taught to suppress, to confront the truths you've been avoiding, to sit with the discomfort of your own story. Kafka had the courage to face his reality, even when it was painful, even when it set him apart from his family's narrative. He wrote, "A book must be the axe for the frozen sea inside us. Your story, your real, unfiltered story, not the sanitized version you've been taught to tell, is that axe. It's the tool that breaks through the layers of denial, pretense, and suppression, allowing you to feel what you've been avoiding for so long." But this process takes immense courage, because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Once you acknowledge the damage, you can't pretend it didn't happen. Once you feel the pain, you have to decide what to do with it, and that decision might require you to change everything. Your relationships, your career, your entire sense of self. Imagine, for example, realizing that your tendency to overwork stems from a childhood where praise was only given for achievements, leaving you with a belief that your worth is tied to productivity. Healing might mean redefining success, setting boundaries at work, and learning to value yourself for who you are, not what you do. Or consider someone who avoids conflict at all costs, a pattern rooted in a childhood where disagreements led to rejection or silence. Healing might involve practicing assertive communication, even when it feels uncomfortable, to reclaim their voice. These changes aren't easy. They require unlearning deeply ingrained habits and confronting fears of rejection or failure, but they're necessary to live a life aligned with your truth rather than your wounds. Here's the secret they don't tell you. There's freedom on the other side of this pain. There's a version of you that exists beyond the programming, beyond your family's limitations, beyond the damage inflicted before you could protect yourself. This version of you is vibrant, creative, powerful, everything you were meant to be before the world taught you to shrink, to doubt, to settle. Kafka glimpsed this version of himself in his writing, in those moments of creation where he transcended his father's criticism, his family's dysfunction, and his own self-doubt. His stories, born from pain, became a testament to his resilience, a way of reclaiming his voice and his truth. He wrote not just to express his suffering, but to make sense of it, to transform it into something meaningful that resonated with others. You, too, can find this freedom, but it starts with facing reality, not the version you wish had existed, not the narrative you were told to believe, but what actually happened. Your family damaged you before you could protect yourself, and that wasn't your fault. But healing that damage is your responsibility, not because you owe it to anyone else, but because you owe it to yourself. You owe it to the child who deserved better, to the person you're meant to become. This damage doesn't disappear just because you ignore it or because time passes. It doesn't resolve itself through external achievements, relationships, or milestones like starting a family of your own. It lingers in your nervous system, your subconscious, your automatic responses to stress, conflict, and intimacy. It shapes every decision you make, every relationship you enter, every dream you pursue or abandon, until you confront it, feel it, grieve it, and integrate it into your story in a way that empowers you rather than enslaves you. when you do this work, when you truly commit to it, not just think about it or read about it, everything changes. You stop seeking approval from those who can't or won't give it. You stop tolerating treatment that dishonors your worth. You stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. You become whole, not perfect, but whole with all your scars, stories, and struggles woven into a life that is authentically yours. This wholeness doesn't mean erasing the past. It means integrating it, learning from it, and using it to fuel your growth rather than define your limitations. So, here's what I invite you to do after reading this. Find a quiet moment to sit with yourself. No phone, no distractions, no running away. Create a space where you can be fully present with your thoughts and feelings. Ask yourself these questions. What damage was done to me before I could protect myself? What patterns am I still living out because of that damage? What would my life look like if I were free from this programming? Don't rush to fix anything or forgive anyone just yet. Simply see, acknowledge, witness your own truth with compassion, as you would a dear friend sharing their pain. Write down your thoughts if it helps, or speak them aloud to yourself. This act of witnessing is powerful. It's the first step toward healing, because you can't heal what you won't feel, and you can't change what you won't acknowledge. If this feels overwhelming, start small. You might try journaling about a specific memory from childhood that still carries an emotional charge, a moment when you felt unseen, unheard, or unworthy. Reflect on how that moment might still influence you today, perhaps in your relationships or your self-talk. Or consider seeking support from a therapist, counselor, or trusted friend who can help you navigate this process. Healing doesn't mean you have to do it alone, but it does mean you have to show up for yourself, to give yourself the care and attention you deserved all along. Your family may have damaged you before you could protect yourself, but that's not where your story ends. You have the power to protect yourself now, to heal yourself now, to choose differently now. The question is, will you? If these words have stirred something deep within you, if you know someone carrying wounds they didn't cause but haven't yet healed, share this message. Sometimes, the most loving act is helping someone see their own truth, offering them a mirror to reflect their pain and their potential. And remember, you're not too much. You're not too sensitive. You're not broken. You're a human being who deserves to be loved, starting with the love you give yourself. That child inside you has been waiting long enough. It's time to listen, to nurture, to set them free. By doing so, you're not just healing yourself, you're breaking the cycle for the generations that come after you, creating a legacy of compassion, resilience, and authenticity.